Hey everyone, it's Andy from Chronically Healthy Life, and I'm a functional nutrition longevity coach, or what I like to call a functional longevity expert. And on today's episode of Fountain Youth, I am going to be talking about your inner report card. But before I jump in and do that, I love to introduce my wonderful co-host here, Amanda Beth. Amanda, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Andy. It's good to be here again on the Fountain of Youth. And I am a intuitive healer and a wellness coach. And I also own a float center here in Southeast Iowa. I practice homeopathic education. So I'm a homeopathic educator and looking at things, um, just bringing together people's wellness in all aspects, the physical, emotional, and spiritual health.
I love that. I love that. So today's topic was actually inspired by one of my friends asking me a question. We usually do Transformation Tuesday training on LifeWave products, and she was bringing up that, oh, one of my friends wanted to know what type of blood labs I should be getting, and she doesn't know who to ask, the doctors and stuff like that. And I said, hey, I'm a functional nutrition coach. That's what I do. I look at blood labs, and it's interesting. I'm going to love your input on this, on what standardized blood labs are soon. But I just think that, one, when you go see a doctor to get blood labs, they don't take all the markers that you should be getting to see like a full report card of your health, right?
Mhm.
If you go into school, you have social studies, you got physics, you got math, you got gym, PE or whatever, right? And all they're doing is they're just taking a few of those subjects. So you could be failing history because you didn't take your history course, or you could be failing phys ed because they didn't check your score in phys ed. It's the same thing when you go to your doctor normally to get blood tests. They take the bare minimum. And you usually, if something really comes out at them, then they'll schedule the additional tests, right?
Well, a lot of
As
that, yeah, but I think a lot of that has come down to, so I've worked in a medical practice just recently, and a lot of times people are like, "Well, I'll do whatever labs my insurance will pay for."
yes,
And so when we allow the insurance company to dictate what we participate in, because I know there were labs a lot of times that the doctor would want to order. It's like,
hmm
but to know what's going on, we need this, this, and this.
hmm
And they're like, well, if my insurance will pay for it. And it's like, well, no, we'll just have to treat you blindly, I guess. But having those pre and post labs, if you're going into doing something new in treatment, there is those base labs, and those base labs are the ones that they'll pay for, the CMP, just looking at where things are at. But when you're talking about nutrition, which is an area that I feel Western medicine is very negligent in because there's not a lot
yeah,
of training.
yes,
What was in 17 in Vogue this month about, what's the good thing with a trendy diet. Um, but I really think that, yeah, you've got to know what you're tracking, what is important, and what makes your total health picture. That it
agree.
in and it's not, the labs that you're watching are probably not the same labs that I would be watching,
hmm
because we're looking at different aspects of our lives. And the other thing too is when you are going to that doctor, you can don't confuse Dr. Google with your doctor. That's very
Yes,
insulting to them. But know what your concerns are and be open and be honest and tell your doctor all the things you think you're going to be judged about. You need to have a physician that's going to order those labs for you, that's going to be able to um, work with what you've got going on. And if you're not honest
yes.
with them, you're not going to get the answers you need. You're not going to get the treatment you need. So, yeah.
I totally agree with you. A lot of people think that doctors are responsible for our health. Doctors are actually our partners in health, right? We should be working together with them. And if your doctor's not willing to listen to what's going on in your body and they only spend that 5 minutes. And I understand doctors are busy. Don't get me wrong, and once again, neither of us are doctors, so this
Right.
is our opinion. We're not diagnosing, treating, or curing anything, right? But I am talking this on a functional nutrition standpoint, where I do have the training to look at blood labs. But it is sort of funny because you're talking about blood labs that most people say I want to cover under insurance, and it's funny because when I went to see my doctor last year in Texas. So, when we moved to Texas, I never saw a doctor. We caught COVID. It was like a flu and we got better and everything. But, we never got our yearly checkups and stuff. And I finally went to get a yearly checkup. And, my wife's got really good insurance through the company she works with. So I was thinking, well, I'm just going to go see a doctor. And I say, look, I want all these labs. All right. And then like she's doing, the checking my heart, breathing and everything. And then she looks at me, Andy, and she says, Andy, why do you need to know all these labs? I said, well, I just want to know where I am in these aspects. And then she started asking me questions, and I should have clued in, but a little bit. I think I was being a little bit of my ego got in, right? But she was saying, are you feeling like, are you having headaches? Are you tired? Blah, blah, blah. Right. I said, no, I feel great. But then I want them to do all these tests. Right. And then she gave me a warning and I blew it off. But she says, Andy, if these numbers come up too good and there's nothing wrong, we're going to have to charge you for it. Right. And I was thinking, if you don't test, you're not going to know. Right. Like that's the way I thought. And I tell you, it was eye-opening because the test came back and there's like one or two. I'm never going to say I have perfect blood numbers. I don't. There's always something we can work on. Like you said, we all have our own problems. But she calls me. I said, Andy, everything looks in general pretty good. Your blood sugar's a little high. Your cholesterol numbers, well, they could be improved. But remember when I told you that there are some numbers that if they're too good, we're not paying for? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, these numbers are like really good. And I don't have anything to write down saying you needed them. And, the crazy thing is I got charged $700 for labs. Right. Which if I went outside, it would only cost me $200 paying cash. Right. So from last year on, I draw, I don't draw my own blood labs, but, now I'm working with a doctor with a group that actually does a full panel of, functional blood panel twice a year for like $500, which is taking more than double the information that they took. Right. Because in my aspect is it is like I said, it is our report card, right? It's like, you don't know what's going on until you see which areas you need improvement on. And then once those areas are failing, C plus, D, we need to work on those areas, right? Like you said in the beginning, everyone has a different area that we need to concentrate on. But if you don't do a full report card of your status, you don't know which areas you may be failing or flunking on, right? So that's something I really wanted to talk about today about blood labs.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I remember one particular gentleman, older fella, he came in for his annual exam and we didn't order a chest x-ray. He goes, a chest x-ray is part of blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, did you work in a foundry? Have you, what work history do you have? Were you a smoker? What history do you have to justify
Correct.
that? Well, it's part of an annual exam. And I said, well, yeah, but your insurance. He goes, I pay top dollar. What you pay and what you get are not, they're not equal. And it's like, well, we can order it, but understand that, if you're not having problems and you didn't work in the industries that are known, you just, it's not going to pay. Plus, who wants all that extra radiation? I mean, who?
Yeah, true. Right. But it is tough. Last year, like after I got that test and paid $700, I was a bitter boy. I'll be honest, right? I don't mind paying for services if it's worth it, but if I think I have to pay for something that I didn't supposed to pay for, I'm bitter about it, and I need to work on that. Okay, but it was funny. Like me and Minna, we went to, we like going to Mexico. We went to Cancun to a resort, and we're hanging out at the infinity pool, and you know me, I'm social. I talk to everybody, right? So there's this couple at the bar, and they're, where are you guys from, right? And they're from Florida, and it turns out like the husband was a doctor, right? And we're sitting there, we're just debating. Minna walks off the wife to talk because we get into this conversation. I said, how come? Like doctors don't do prevention? And then he says, Andy, you don't understand. Our arms are tied, right? And for sure, insurance, like if we write it, it'll be covered by insurance, right? But we have to choose causation. And I can understand that, right? But at the same time, I said, look, people won't know if they're getting worse or better if they never have a full report card. And he says, Andy, I totally agree with you. And I said, what's the solution? Well, he says, when a doctor was asking, did you have these problems? You say yes, 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 and yes.
Well, and and that was,
I would be lying. And he says, well, you want those lab reports paid for, right? So if you say yes, we have to write down you have headaches, you have tinnitus, you have this, you got joint pains, and then you'll get all those tests paid for. And then I was like, wow, okay, so I have to be dishonest to figure out my own health.
But, I
Which is
think
a little bit
that's
messed up, but
yeah, but I
that's
think
the
that's
reality.
kind of how all the insurance industries are. When
Mhm.
I got a roof on my house, they'll cover hail damage and they'll replace the whole roof for hail damage. I
Yes.
didn't know there's hail damage. I'm not a roofer and I am not
Yeah.
climbing up there to check it out. But I had shingles blown off in the wind, so I knew there was
Correct.
wind damage. They don't pay for wind damage. They pay
Mhm.
for a section.
Correct.
And so then it's like, oh, for crying out loud, you and it ended up that there was hail damage, and I worked with a roofer that helped to get it covered, but they still didn't cover the whole cost. And it's like, I have paid insurance on this house, the same insurance
Mhm.
company with the rates going up every year for nearly 27 years. And you don't want to
Wow.
pay for my
Yeah.
roof? It's like, and I said that to several how many people do you have that have been with your company at the same home for 27 years? But I think that yeah, the whole insurance thing I think is a racket on so many levels.
Mhm.
The same thing with your car insurance,
Correct.
health insurance. If you fall and you're not in your own yard or in your own house, they are going to go
Mhm.
after whoever they
Yeah,
can.
you have to sue someone else. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody is looking for a blame thing. And so
Yeah.
I think I'm okay with the idea that we become self-insured and then we
Yes.
start doing those things because the insurance is not covering what we think it should cover on any level. Home,
So true.
auto, health, we need to be more accountable and not relying on those industries because they're just not doing it.
Exactly. Exactly. But
But yes, we
even
need
to
our
say,
labs. We've got to have the labs.
you got to have the labs, because like even if insurance pays for it, there's the other thing that I want to talk about, the difference between functional doctors, functional nutritionists looking at blood labs, because like most doctors, whenever you go see a doctor, most of the time the doctor says, how's everything? They'll say, okay. Or the one that really gets me, the numbers are good for your shape, for your body shape. The numbers is good for your age. I was thinking, there's no such thing. The numbers are either good or they're bad. Like they're making stuff up to make you feel better. But then, I know me and you were talking about this a little bit beforehand, but the numbers are also so standardized across the board that even when they say they are good, it literally means nothing. And we're going to dive in a little bit of that, but I'll start with what you have to say about that. And then I'll give you, my view of that whole thing.
So standardized lab tests, which is really interesting because you have your friend who's a nurse and they say, oh, what's the labs, and
Yeah.
you give them the numbers, so they've memorized the numbers.
Yes.
Standardized lab tests are formulated from the average labs from people who are 18 to 80.
Hmm.
Now you're comparing a healthy, active 18-year-old and an 80-year-old, and you're putting those numbers together and saying that that's normal across the board. There are a few tests, very few tests, that do look at race, that they are a little bit different
Correct.
skewed, and so there's those side notes. But when you're looking at them in the doctor's office, if it doesn't have an asterisk next to it, you're not drawn to realize, where does it fall in that normal range. And so depending on what you're treating, and I know, Andy, you're looking at vitamin C levels, vitamin D3 levels, the levels that people actually need to function and feel good are far beyond what the doctor's office is going to tell you is okay.
Exactly. I
And
I
we
love
did,
that coming from you.
yeah, and we did the clinic that I was at did the bioidentical hormones.
Hmm.
And so hormone functioning, when you consider what's normal for 18 to 80,
Yes.
and then what does a person need of any given age and stage in their life to be healthy,
Hmm.
and so there's, depending on who's drawing your labs,
Yeah.
who's interpreting those labs, and
Hmm.
what you need that lab for. There's like the surgical one, and I've had too many surgeries here recently. I eat keto, so I put salt in my water. I'm
Yes.
drinking salt water all day long, every day.
Hmm. Hmm.
My sodium level is low.
Yeah.
And only when there's a problem. So my sodium level is low. I go in, I have my surgery, and after my surgery, there was a whole bunch of crazy things that happened. Um, yeah, we won't even go there. But they drew my labs again in the hospital, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is a problem. Her sodium's so low." And it's like,
Sure.
no, it's the same level it was beforehand. It doesn't have anything to do with this. This is, this was another thing that had happened in
Correct.
the hospital. And it's like, that's the other problem. If you're doctor hopping, what one doctor prescribes.
Hmm.
So when you see this doctor, you need to own up to everybody else you've seen. If you've seen you're doing the natural medications and things, there are a lot of supplements that interfere dangerously with
Hmm.
prescription medications.
Yes.
And your pharmacist can help you with a lot of that, but you got to own up to all the things you're doing. When you're
Correct.
buying, things that are prescription here but over the counter from somewhere else, the
Mhm.
consistency is not always there.
I agree. I agree. And I want to touch upon a little bit between your 18 and 80 years old, because I'm not sure if people actually understand what you're talking about. So when you're looking at the range where doctor says your number's okay, it is an average of 95% of the 18 to 80 from the healthiest to the sickest. So when they say that you're okay, maybe if you're lucky, you are like super healthy on the 18-year-old range, but that also could mean that you're about to die on the 80-year-old range, but it will still mean okay. And then when you get an asterisk mark, that is not a badge of honor. That means your number is so bad now that you need medication. And that's when they say, oh, we need to take these additional tests. Right. So that's where for me, as a functional nutritionist and the difference from functional doctors and your regular doctor is we are looking at a much narrower range, right? And saying
Mhm.
it's like regular doctors want to make sure you're getting a C plus, C minus as a pass, maybe even a D. But for us, we want to give you the A minus, A plus. Like we don't even want the B. It's like B is the Asian fail where how I grew up, right? We want to at least have an A minus, and you're looking at a much narrower range to gauge if your body is just functioning, barely living, like you said, or are we functioning at optimal levels, right?
Right.
And that's where the difference is. It's like most doctors, to be honest, some doctors don't even know what optimal numbers are, right? Like when I talk to my best friends that are like, family doctors, and I'm saying, well, my number is this. He's like, Andy, that's great. I said, what are you talking about? That number is shit. you know?
Well, and it's where your perspective is. If you're, family practice and you're looking at the
Mhm.
generals, yeah. if if you're looking strictly at nutrition, if you're looking at the exercise world,
Yep.
and and all of those, they pull in from so many different things. So what is it you're looking for? And that's where getting the labs done when you feel good. So you
Mhm.
know what your baseline is for you. So when the studies came out here, 5, 7 years ago. What's a normal body temperature? You go to take your temperature, what's normal?
Mhm.
98.6. 98.6 is
98.6,
not normal.
98.5, yeah, 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 right around that range, right?
98.6 is actually, so when they
Mhm.
established that, they were taking the temperature of patients who came in. And this was
Mhm.
in Germany when this was established. And I can't tell you the exact numbers, but it was a very long time ago. The only
Mhm.
time people went to the doctor is when they were sick.
Correct.
So they based those numbers on the people who were coming in sick and what the average temperature was for them.
Mhm.
They've restudied this and rethought it. Actually, a healthy body temperature is like 96.8, not 98.6. It's different
Correct. Mhm.
when you're looking at people who are healthy.
Correct.
And so it's like, what you decide, what is normal. And I've
Mhm.
always known my temperature runs low. I go into the doctor's office and they say, "Are you feeling okay?" I'm feeling fine. "Oh, well, your temp's low." It's always low. That's normal for me.
I love it. I love it. That is so true. That is so true. Right. And well, going into that, there are certain markers. I do want to go through a few of them that I think that is fairly important when it comes to longevity, when it comes to optimal health and longevity. And of course, I am very passionate about people that have diabetes, Alzheimer's, because that runs in both me and Mina's family. So those are the people that really resonate, that I really want to help with, right? And Alzheimer's is now type 3 diabetes. Like, people don't realize it. It is caused by sugar. It's sugar damage to the brain that's causing Alzheimer's. And a lot of people think, oh, well, it's genetic. Well, no, it's what you put in your mouth that's causing Alzheimer's. Yes, there's a gene for it, but if you turn on that gene, you're going to get it. And loading and gutting with sugar, that's how you're going to get it, right? So one of the things that I think is very important to measure is, of course, your blood sugar, right? Your fasting blood sugar, your regular blood sugar, like your blood glucose levels, right? And then, of course, the what's called the H1 B, the average over 90 days, right? And the funny thing is, the number that this one's sort of important. I'm not going to tell you all the numbers because otherwise there'll be too many numbers. But the number that you should be getting is under 100, right? If you're fasting, it should be under 100. And if your number is between 100 and 125, you're pre-diabetic. Like, there's no if, ands, or buts. You're pre-diabetic, right? And if it's over 125, you're diabetic, right? But when your doctors see your number between 100 and 125, they'll say, you're okay, right? It's like, you can probably work on your diet a little bit, but you're okay. They do not tell you that you need to bring it below 100 to have your body function properly. But the next time you go in without any changes in your lifestyle, you're now over 125. Is, oh, your number's a little high. You are type 2 diabetic now. We got a drug for that, right? And that's the situation where a lot of people don't understand is, you know, get your blood panels reassessed by functional nutritionist or functional nutrition doctor, because they will look at it through a different lens to let you know, like, are you really okay? Are you optimal? Or are you on the verge of falling off the cliff and developing a chronic condition? And a lot of people, they don't realize that, right? And then the other thing, I love your input, but the other thing that I want to talk about briefly is, you mentioned a lot of drugs, right? A lot of people are already on drugs and medication, and they think, oh, you hear about all these supplements that are good. I'm going to take supplements. And yes, there are interactions that can cause problems, right? But, the way I look at it is, and this is callous to doctors, like, I love doctors to death. Don't get me wrong. But if doctors are helping you be preventative, we're going to put them out of business. It's like if they start telling you where you need to lower your numbers before you need medication, you're never going to need medication, which is actually a good thing.
Some of the insurances have required that you are seen annually.
Mhm.
Even if you have no health concerns, you're healthy, they require that you are seen, annually. So it's
Are those
well
the ones
intended, and
that
most
are more
people.
linked with life insurance policies, just to making sure they have a reason to decline your life insurance?
The whole life insurance thing, yes. My life insurance thinks that I should not weigh as much weight as I am, and I said, "Oh, so I can show you that I've taken off the weight, I've kept the weight off, and then I don't have to pay the fat girl rate." And they said, "Oh no, you're not on that. We never said you're fat." No, but you're gonna put it. It's the tabled rate.
Yes, yes, yes.
But having that standard and everything, and you talked about Alzheimer's, that there's a genetic component to it, but it is more that whole type 3 diabetes, and it's
Yeah.
the food and what's in our food sources. But it tends to follow that family pattern, because how you ate, a lot
Yes.
of times our eating habits are
Yeah.
established with our
Yeah.
family of origin, whether they're genetic or not.
And you're going to
That's
continue
how we
that down
learn
the
how
road.
to
Yeah.
eat.
Hmm.
And we had a patient, just educating people. So we had a patient, and she was pre-diabetic,
Hmm.
and we'd kind of given her some tips and trips. The doctor I worked for was very good at educating people. She would spend the time, she would educate you. And this particular patient just really needed a little more oomph, and so she made the referral to the diabetic educator.
Hmm.
And the lady comes back a month later, and she's like, "I don't know how I'm going to do this. I went to that lady you told me I was supposed to." It was a female diabetic educator.
Sure.
The diabetic educator did nothing to educate her on how to eat or exercise or anything, put her on 3 medications, 2 of
Mhm.
which her insurance would not cover. It's like,
Yeah.
what? So be aware, there are so many things that you can do through your nutrition. And
Yes.
when you have a diagnosis, any diagnosis, I'm going to say the food you eat and the activities that you do have a direct impact on nearly every single thing medically that happens in your body.
I so agree with that 100%.
But boy,
Right.
popping a pill is so much easier than doing those push-ups.
On that note, I want to run through a couple of other, blood markers that I think people should be tracking. So you should be tracking fasting insulin, right? A lot of people they're just tracking the blood sugar, but they're not tracking the fasting insulin. So you want to be insulin resistant, because that's why you get pre-diabetic or diabetes, right? You mentioned vitamin D. Vitamin D is crucial that you should be tracking it, and they never pay for it. They never do. And it is such an inexpensive test. It's like $40, and they're not willing to pay for it, right? But vitamin D is crucial for your immune system, neurological system, everything, your muscles, right? And even like they did a study during COVID, people with optimal numbers of vitamin D of 60 nanograms per milliliter and above did not get sick after catching COVID. So that is a simple thing that people could have done, is optimize their vitamin D. And if you catch COVID, oh well, like me, it's just like a flu, a couple of sniffs, and 2 days later, I'm okay, right? So vitamin D is crucial. Vitamin B12, another one crucial, especially if you're vegan or vegetarian. Both me and you, we eat keto, we like meat, so not an issue.
Not an issue, no.
Right. Other ones that are very crucial, you mentioned this a little bit. You mentioned sodium, and a lot of people say, oh, salt is so bad, it raises blood pressure. But salt is electrolytes. You need your sodium, you need your potassium, you need your magnesium. These are electrolytes that our bodies require for proper functioning and repair. So it's like you said, you're drinking salt water and your number is low of sodium. How's that possible?
Well, and they've done the studies. So people that do have high blood pressure, Hypertension is the other word they use. Only 10% of those people with hypertension or high blood pressure are is induced by salt.
Yes, exactly.
And, and you look at all the things, and when we look at, the shelf stability and everything, and most
Mhm.
people are doing the regular ionized salt. I
Oh,
mean,
oh,
iodine
yeah,
is one of those things that we have a hard time getting that in our diet.
correct.
um, and it's very crucial. And actually, it helps with our kiddos who are having that hyperactivity and some of that autism. And how can it get absorbed? And do you need it or not? And
Correct,
that's where they put iodine on the bottom of your foot and let it absorb through your body that way.
correct, correct. But you want the iodized salt coming in naturally where the salt was mined. You don't want
Right.
it after the fact where you're buying like the regular table salt with iodine added, right? Because like
Yeah.
that salt is just, oh my God, you must be just be eating dirt off the ground. Like that's how
Because,
clean that
well, it's
salt
cut with everything that makes it stable so it doesn't stick together.
actually,
So you don't have to
right?
put rice and saltines in your
So,
salt
when they
shaker.
say that salt is bad, well, technically they're not lying. Regular table salt is bad, and that's probably where it's causing all these impurities is what's causing all these problems. But, moving forward, for me, I believe inflammation is the cause of all diseases, right?
Absolutely.
So there's absolute markers that people should be testing for markers of inflammation. And recently, I got some friends that's been talking about good fish oil, right? And omega 6, omega 3, the ratio very very important. Don't get me wrong, right? But like they're using this slogan test don't gas, and they give you a test for your omega 3 to omega 6 ratio, which I think is important. Like no one hardly ever does that. The doctors never ask for that test, and you really want it ideally 3 to 1, like omega 6 3, and 1 to omega 3, right, for optimal. But with our SAD diet or standard American diet, most of us is probably 30 to 1. So I can understand on that aspect to test that. And like you said, that's easy to do. All we do is choose better oils, and we will automatically get a better profile there. But that is just a very small aspect when you're checking inflammation, because there are other markers like I always talk about the CRP, the HSCRP, the C reactive protein. That's showing that there's inflammation in the heart, right? And that is very crucial. That's like systemic inflammation. If there's inflammation in your blood, you're gonna have a high CRP number. Whenever you get sick, that number goes up, right? So it was funny for this company that was talking this omega 3 to omega 6. When I asked, how come you don't measure this? Oh, the omega 3 to 6 is more important. I said, well, see, now you're just using it for marketing. And to me, that's why, I think it's not cool. They got a great product, don't get me wrong, but I think they're misleading the public a little bit because they're only giving a snapshot of the picture, right? But there are other markers that I think is important to measure inflammation, like homocysteine. That's another one that's good for measuring inflammation. Hardly ever on your standard panel, right? And that's really good for measuring inflammation in the heart and in the brain, right? Another one that is sort of important, really important right now, with the whole COVID pandemic. They're always talking about blood clots and all this. Your fibrinogen is very important to measure to see, your blood clotting capabilities and stuff like that. So I think that's also very, very important when it talks about inflammation. And leaning a little bit more on that because everyone knows my thoughts on COVID and the vaccines, especially the spike protein. The spike protein is very dangerous, right? If you caught it from COVID and you got exposed in a big dose, I'm not saying that it was fake. If you got big dose of anything, toxin can kill you, right? So it's very important to know how much spike protein you have in your body. And a lot of people think, well, if I catch something, my body's automatically just going to eject and get rid of it. True, if your body's working optimally. But for most people, that's not the case, right? So now there's studies showing that people that has long COVID have lingering spike proteins in their body, right? And so another test that I like to put on here that no doctor, unless they're a functional doctor, would even consider putting this on is your COVID antibody test, right? And what that test is like it tests the antibody against a spike protein, right? So if that number is high, that means your body still have a lot of spike protein that your body's not getting out, and elevated spike proteins, if we're talking about clinical studies, it's all coming out now. Heart disease, heart attacks, strokes, Alzheimer's, Bell's palsy, like all these things that people are experiencing is and can be caused by elevated spike protein, right? So, of course, that's very, very important to get out of your body, right? And then, of course, we should be doing liver panels, right? Because liver panels function in your liver. We talked about liver a couple of episodes ago, how important that is for detox. And, it's a roundabout way of seeing how well your body's producing glutathione, because that's where, glutathione is produced is within the helping the liver detox. And the last one is that I want to talk about is your lipid panel, right? Like your cholesterol. And that's the one where I always clash with my doctors when they say, "Hey, your cholesterol is really high, Andy," and I was saying, yeah, "It's all right. I don't need no statins."
Yeah. Statins are. There's other ways to die.
Right.
But you've got to have the cholesterol. You've got to have the fat. The fat feeds the brain. You've got to have it. And what was really interesting is when statins first came out, they wanted you to achieve this level in cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
And people got it, and it's like, whew, everybody met that level, and they're like, oh, we can't keep selling this drug because everybody met that level. So they lowered it. And it's at such a level that, it's kind of like the BMI.
Yep.
I am 5'4". If I weighed the 155 pounds that they think I should weigh, that's not taking into consideration how my body was built.
Yes, agree.
It's not just we need standards, but goodness, give us something that's realistic.
Correct.
That we can actually maintain instead of beating us down. And when you're talking about diabetes as being such a huge problem, when your blood sugars are out of control, your cholesterol is going to follow.
Yes.
You get your blood sugars under control, your cholesterol is going to come down into a safer range. And it is not. Your cholesterol panel is 3 numbers. And it's the ratio in those 3 numbers. And no, I don't know exactly what that ratio is, but it's not just what one number is. And I have a friend whose doctor was just pushing about the LDL, the LDL, the LDL. Yep. That was the only number that doctor was watching.
That they care about. Exactly.
And it's like, are you going to talk about these other 2? Because they play into that combined number. So you just, I was happy that doctor retired.
I want to stress something that you said that I'm not sure our viewers caught. Your cholesterol, like your bad cholesterol, like the high bad cholesterol, is caused by blood sugar and not by fat.
It's interrelated. It's interrelated. And so when you have diabetes, the sugar that floods your body, it is deteriorating and stressing every single organ and cell in your body. So until those numbers are under control, the rest of your body cannot function in a healthy way.
Exactly. I love that. I love that.
You've got to, and that's where I think that doctors and individuals, we can get so much tunnel vision that we're only looking at this and we're not looking at the whole body. The whole body, from your skin to your liver, you got to look at all of it.
Yes.
And I've expressed my opinion. Western medicine has its place, but so many things are you take one medication that causes a side effect and a side effect and a side effect. And And my opinion is a lot of Western medicine is suppressing the symptoms. The symptoms are there. They're your
Correct.
body screaming out saying, do something different.
Exactly.
Eat different, exercise different, sleep different, socialize different. Make some changes. Be healthy,
Correct.
feel good.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, before we move forward, I just want to dive in a little bit more about the cholesterol test. Most of the people they get is just a regular standard cholesterol test. And of course, cholesterol is important. I want to stress on that. It's important because, it's a hormone, right? And if the number is too low, it messes with your thyroid. And if your cholesterol is too low, it starts messing with your brain, right? And you talked about LDL. There's a very recent study, and people can reach out to me, and I'll show it to them. They said when LDL gets to this certain level, all those people they tested at that certain level had brain dysfunction. They had brain decline. So they basically said they're starting to develop dementia towards Alzheimer's because LDL is too low, being lowered by drugs or from lifestyle, cutting all oils out of their diet. Right. So, there's always good oils and bad oils, of course. We don't want to be taking vegetable oils. We want to be getting like the good oils. But, when it comes to cholesterol tests, make sure you're asking for the complete panel that measures the size and particle number of the cholesterol too. It's like an NMR test, I think it's called. Right. And, that measures the size. It also measures if it's oxidized, because if it's oxidized, then it becomes bad. But if it's not oxidized, cholesterol is not, to be honest, that big of a deal. So when I look at my own blood numbers, I was thinking, yeah, I know I've been out a little bit too much getting my French fries and my chicken and waffles, but I understand why that number is where it is. But to be honest, I'm not too concerned because I know I can swing that back in the right direction. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I want to, end with, cholesterol. And then like the last one, like I said, I want to talk a little bit about the thyroid problem. Most people are just measuring TSH, right? And they're just going off that one number. And when that number gets jacked, all sorts of things could be going wrong. So you do want to measure all the, the components of your thyroid, the T3, the T4. You want to get a big number going through, because thyroid can be disrupted by your hormones, which could be disrupted by low cholesterol. It can also be disrupted by chemicals and pesticides, right? So like I've been working with a lot of veterans lately, and everyone's talking about Agent Orange, right? And Agent Orange is basically glyphosate on steroids, right? Which is horrible, like just horrible. Don't get me wrong, right? And almost every veteran that was exposed to Agent Orange have thyroid problems. I wonder why. You know what I'm saying? And yet doctors, they don't correlate, and if they do, they're not telling you, right? So there are holistic ways to try to fix that problem rather than getting your thyroid replaced. I'm not replaced, removed, and all these drugs and stuff. There are better solutions.
Yeah. And when you're talking about thyroid testing, one thing that a lot of women take biotin
Mm-hmm.
for hair and nail growth
Yeah.
and everything, that can interfere with your thyroid result. So make sure you're not taking your biotin supplement for, I think it's like 48 hours before
Yeah. I think,
thyroid test.
the
And
standard is 48 hours to 3 days. Exactly. So
yeah,
otherwise
I mean,
it's,
they're really good about asking, are you fasting? How long
yes.
have you been fasting? And have you been, but there's also fasting too long. If you've been
Yes.
fasting too long, your results can go the other direction.
Correct. It could be skewed too. It's not a proper
Yeah, so being up to date on what they're going to test you for, if you need to be fasting or not. Black coffee is one thing that they allow you to have
Mhm.
while you're fasting. That splash of creamer drove one patient into like looking like total diabetic and renal failure. It's like, you said you were fasting.
Exactly.
Well, I had coffee. Did you have black? No, I only put just a splash. I'm like, girlfriend, you just wasted your lab results because they
Yes,
mean nothing now. So
exactly.
be honest. And looking at that liver panel, when you change, you make lifestyle change, the liver can regenerate. So
Oh,
don't
yeah.
beat yourself up that you made bad decisions
Correct.
before. It can repair it. Your body can repair itself given the opportunity in the right environment, but you got to know it's a problem to be able to fix it.
Exactly, exactly. Well, moving on, we shared so much information. And of course, both me and Amanda, we're passionate about LifeWave products, right? So I always like to end on a high note on how we can incorporate LifeWave products to help with the conditions we're talking about. And of course, we're talking about optimal health today, right? So we always recommend the X39, right? The X39 elevates GHKCU, and that is shown to help stimulate new stem cell growth. And stem cells help repair your body, putting you on optimal health. And just talking about the GHKCU, I forgot one blood marker that no
Copper.
one ever measures. It's copper.
I asked my
Exactly.
doctor for it. They don't have the tube to test it.
Right? It's crazy. And you know how low people's copper levels are if they are not eating meat or seafood? It's like really, really low. Right.
Yeah.
So when people come to me and they say, well, I'm using the X39, you said it's supposed to boost my GHKCU, you know, how come I'm not feeling any better? Well, we cannot create something out of nothing, right? So, it is basically creating the GHKCU from what's in your body to create it. And if you don't have any copper in your diet, well, it's not going to work too well. So, copper is another one that is so crucial to test for. And like you said, the doctors normally say, why you want to test for that? Right? That's something you really need to know. And, I have copper in my supplements that we take every morning, and it's actually from LifeWave too. But I was taking another supplement that has copper. But me and Minna, we like eating lobster. The sea cockroaches of the world. It's like that's literally what they are, right? But there's so many studies that lobsters can help with longevity. They live a freakishly long time. So
They
you are what
do.
you eat. So we love
And
lobster.
they and lobsters actually get more agile and stronger as they age,
Yes.
unlike humans who tend to get weaker and tired?
Exactly. And it's funny, it's because lobsters actually have a lot of carnosine in their body too. And, that's another topic for another day. But lobster is the only animal that actually gets stronger as they age. And, they basically almost keep their strength and mobility all the way till they die, which probably would be a long time if we're not catching them all and eating them. Right?
And so that regional impact that you have a greater access to lobster than I do.
Oh, it's funny because like there's a couple of supermarkets here, and like lobster tails, like the 4-ounce ones, they're usually like $10 a tail, which is pretty expensive. But on occasion, it drops down to like $5.99 a tail. And me and Min will go in there and we'll buy like 50 of them. And we don't even have that many from the freezer. I said, just give me everything you have. Like I wipe them out, because like that's like $5.99 for a lobster tail. It's like that is untouchable. Right. But the last thing that I want to recommend, of course, is the glutathione, right? Glutathione is the master antioxidant of our body, which is really important because we're talking about toxins, the glyphosate, the chemicals, and stuff like that. And glutathione does help your body naturally detox, right? So between the two of these, X39 elevates glutathione by 30%, which is a lot already. So for most people, that will probably get you detoxing, right? But what you want to do is get to the point where you can start using the glutathione patches, which actually elevate it 300%. But that's not something that you need to wear daily. But it's something that me and Minna wear, probably every other week, for 5 days, right? Just because, like I said, we just want to get the detox going. And if I don't feel anything coming out, I know I'm all detoxed out, which is great,
So yeah, and it's incredible. And the LifeWave patches do definitely make a difference. I've been wearing them 2 years now, and
Yeah.
I really, yeah, if there's times when it's been, life hits and all of a sudden that pack isn't right next to my supplement in the morning, it's like, oh, you're feeling it. So,
Exactly. Minna was just telling me, we're out of energy patches the other day. We're out of carnosine. And it's like, even when we traveled, I actually had to get you to the next day, Saturday, air me some glutathione because we're out, because I never travel without my glutathione. And that's and to me, it's way safer than putting on a mask, right? Or getting more drugs. It's just a natural way to elevate your immune system. And we
again,
came back, we're on a plane
giving
for hours, around a lot of people, came back, no problem.
yeah. But it's giving your body the opportunity to use what it has to heal and
Exactly.
maintain itself. It's not putting more chemicals. There's no chemicals, there's no drug interaction. There's just positive health results. Don't mind the dog flopping on the floor.
I thought you were doing a tap dance underneath there.
Ooh,
But
no, that's a
anyways,
100-pound. That's a 100-pound pupper popping in the corner there.
anyways, this was that slightly longer episode of Fountain of Youth, but you can tell that me and Amanda is really passionate about helping people with their health, and for me, it's like, if you're not measuring your health in any way, there's no way knowing if we're moving forward over health or sliding backwards. So blood labs are so important. Reach out to me if you want to have another person look at your current blood labs through a functional lens, right? Because like I said, we all want to know which areas we're weaker on, so we can improve on those areas. Because no matter what you're doing, like you said, Amanda, there's always areas that we can improve upon. And so far, my area is my blood sugar. I like to blame it on genetics, because my family is all diabetes, but it's still life choices. I still like my desserts when I go out to eat. Not something I'm going to cut out, but I know it's what's causing a number. And when it gets too high, I will figure out what to do to lower it. Right. But if you're
Mhm.
not measuring it and you're waiting before you start feeling symptoms, that's usually when it's too late. That's why I always say test every 6 months, right? And if you can't find a doctor that's willing to pull those tests for you, and you want to pull those panels yourself, reach out to me, and I'll love
Yeah,
to help
there's a
with
lot of
anything.
independent labs that you can order tests directly from.
Exactly,
So,
exactly, exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much for this episode. You can reach out to me at longevityofandy.com for a free consult. And what's the best way to reach out to you, Amanda?
AmandaBethHealing.com. And if you do /Linktree, that'll get you to all the different platforms and the whatever fits with your modality the best to reach me.
Love it. And I do want to share one last thing. This is still sort of uh, um, something in motion, but we are going to have our Chronic Health Collective Masterclass soon, right? That's coming up in September. And of course, you're going to have the 14 of us collective health coaches over 4 days. And we have so many amazing guests that's going to inspire you for making healthier life changes. But for us masterclass, us coaches, the 14 coaches, we are going to deliver masterclass specifically on a topic to help you where you are.
Yeah. And there's so many different avenues. I mean, we're gonna touch on just about everything you need to make your life as healthy as possible. I mean, we've got some finance, some relationships, some
Yeah,
education, um, as well as the health parts in there too. So yeah, there's
exactly.
something for everybody. Something for everybody.
So, you'll be seeing more of these, more of this promotion from me, Amanda, and throughout the other collective coaches in the next few days. But, watch out for it. It's coming up on September 19th for the first day. It's going to be happening from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock live, right? So, once you start seeing it, make sure you register early.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds good. So, any closing thoughts, Amanda?
Get tested, be healthy, and live the best life that you can.
I love it. I love it. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Fountain Youth for this week's episode. And reach out to us if you have any health conditions that you want to talk about, and maybe we can help out. You need to take action. Set up that call, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get better unless you take action. We'll see you all next week.